Welcome to the Alapra Podcast, the home for cultural chit chat in and outside Madrid. People will talk. Welcome to the first Alapra podcast of the year and the decade. Mary, how are you?
That's controversial.
Oh, this new thing about it starts after 9 ends or in the first year of the next decade?
Exactly.
What do you think?
I don't know why it's relevant, to be honest.
You're right. So thank you for raining on the parade of my greeting. So let's just move on to the rest of the first part. Why don't we? So are you full of Roscon de Reyes?
Yay, that was nice.
Yes, it is. So for those who are not familiar, of course, on the 6th of January is Spanish Christmas, when the three kings eventually get to the crib of the little baby Jesus and give him the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They are of course Balthazar, Gaspar, and Melchior. Sound lads to a man. Anyway, you told me before when you were younger, you used to have the figurines of the three wise men, and you would gradually move them closer and closer to the Belén, which is what the Spanish call the nativity scene.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do that this year?
No, I didn't. But we used to do it all the time because each one of us had a particular king. I was gonna say or queen, but no, king. And then we just move them little by little from the moment we put the nativity until they arrive to
the Belén, the nativity.
Yes, but I wanted to say
crib.
To the crib.
Not the MTV crib, but and also, did you know that they used to arrive? Well, or according to the Bible anyway, they arrived on elephant, donkey, and some other four-legged beast. And you can see them on the 5th of January in every neighborhood in Madrid, and the Kawabata, which is like basically it floats parades with the three kings coming in and people throwing things like sweets. Well, I say things because normally it's sweets, but in Sevilla they were throwing spanners.
Yes, I don't
bowls.
know. It's complete madness. Normally the floats that take part in the parade some of them are sponsored, or most of them are sponsored by different companies or shops, especially in small places, and other ones are just created by like neighbor associations or sports clubs, things like that. And then there was one that was in the news because I don't know if it belonged to a DIY shop or something, but they just started throwing bolts and nails and spanners and just, I don't know, they interviewed an old man that got like part of like a pipe for a tap.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it was really random. And the police wasn't very happy because, of course, it's not the same. Throwing a sweet is bad enough because some people really throw them to hit you. But a spanner, I mean,
It's weird because, I mean, they do throw lots of sweets and people converge in them trying to eat them. So I can only imagine people think, naturally enough, that these bowls are sweets and then pick them up and either eat them in their reverie before realizing that...
Pick them up is not that bad. The worst thing is when they throw them at you if it hits you in the head.
Yeah, that's true. And then the roscon is this like circular cake. For kind of controversial, not a lot of people like it, but it comes in trufa, which is like truffle, crema, and nata. Nata is kind of cream, but what's crema? What's the difference between crema and nata?
Nata is what you call cream in English, but crema, which is cream technically, it's like it's like custard a bit.
Yeah, nata is the best one, obviously.
No, well, to be honest, like when I was a kid, there was only dry ones.
Yeah.
Like the invention of adding other things was like came later, and I've kind of like tried, well, like because of my lactose intolerance. For a long time I've never really tried the stuffed ones, but I've tried truffle the last couple of years, and it's quite nice actually.
Okay, and who was your king? Just to finish on that.
I don't know, because because we're like 5 siblings, by the time I arrived, like all the kings were taken. So I just like couldn't be bothered to pick one, because my 2 sisters had one each, and the boys had, one for both of them. So I was like, meh.
Okay.
So depending on the year, I just picked one or another.
Well, this year I won a little miniature statue of Balthazar in the Roscoe. So there.
As well as your €100.
Yes, I won the Spanish lottery.
God, you win everything.
And that's how my gambling addiction started.
But you do know that when you win the figurine, that means that you have to pay the Roscon the following year.
Yeah, but I just won't come back until the 9th of January or something.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's sorted. And, well, of course, long-time listeners will know that moving from south to north, you are from Leon, you're not actually from Madrid. And those damn independistas, they're a breakaway republic. What's happening in the worlds of Leon in Spain at the moment?
Well, they've just approved taking to parliament the idea of becoming a separate province. It all comes because historically, like, Leon was a kingdom in itself. It's the home of like parliamentary democracy. It's the oldest parliament in Europe.
It's not like the British.
No, but it's true. Well, no, they claim that, but it's not true.
Yeah.
But
you could say it's fake news.
Yeah, it's fake news.
More on that in part 3.
Yeah, but no, definitely. So like it's one of like the oldest ones. So yeah, I mean they spend most of the time separate. Then they got stuck to Castilla, and of course like the character and everything is quite different. And then they used to be associated to a couple of the provinces that they share more culturally with, but then, basically after the dictatorship, it got stuck again to like another part of Spain that, they were like historical enemies.
Yeah.
It's like, and then they put the capital in the other town. So,
So obviously Leon are pushing for this. They want to be with Valladolid and another.
No, they don't want to be with Valladolid. They hate Valladolid. like literally now, all the people from Leon are gonna be like really annoyed.
So I mean, they still want to be part of Spain.
Yeah, of course.
But so I mean, this shouldn't be controversial. Of course, in government we have Pepe, Pedro Sanchez, and Pablo Iglesias. Not the conservative Pepe.
Yeah, of course.
Partido Popular. But so are you expecting this to be rubber stamped, or will this be knocked back?
Nah, they've been claiming it like since 70s. Like, I remember there were demonstrations when they decided to put the capital in Valladolid, but the capital of the province. But well, it probably not go anywhere. It's the first time that they actually managed to approve it.
Leon, is it left wing? I mean, generally.
Not really. Well, it's complicated.
Okay.
Because, like, on the one hand, you've got all the mining villages. But then, all the part that is like closer to Asturias. But then it's kind of like also like there's a provincial kind of historical bourgeoisie, to call it somehow. So, for example, I don't know. I think it carried on a bit from the dictatorship as well. So there's a mixture. Some like provincial towns, cities are like quite conservative. I don't want to be controversial, but let's say there's a mixture. Yeah. I think we've spoken about this before.
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah, vaguely remember. We've already alienated people who like the other types of roscon, so.
No, I haven't said like they cannot eat them. I've just said like I like truffle.
Okay, fair enough. And Dentonata eaters. So that is our political broadcast for the new year and our salutation for the new year. I think we'll move gingerly on to part 2, where we're going to be talking about books and photography and New York and Japan and Russia and New York again, and then we're going to go to part 3 after that. So thank you very much for staying tuned so far. We'll be back in a second.
Why are you waving your hand?
Welcome to part 2 of the show. So we're going to start with some books in this part. Then we move on to the exhibition. So I guess I read them. Do you have any questions to start off to get the ball rolling?
What's the title of the first book?
Well, there's Job, not Job, Job, written by Joseph Roth.
You pronounce it differently.
Not Job.
So why you say not Job?
Not job. Not like as in the thing that you're working at.
You pronounce it differently.
Job, as in the biblical character Job.
I know, but I didn't know you pronounced it differently.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we had this conversation in the museum.
No,
on
but
Tuesday.
just because it's the same word, so you told me that, but I didn't know
Okay.
that you pronounced it differently.
Well, I did. I do. And continue. I will.
And the rest of the English population does as well. Okay. English speaking. Okay.
Jesus.
Yes.
Christ. Okay, so this is written by Joseph Roth. It's actually kind of curious because looking at our analytics, the Joseph Roth podcast has been doing quite well recently for some reason, which is very strange because when you have a blog or a podcast, as we do, and you check the stats and stuff like that, you have your shows that are, consistently getting hits, and other ones that pop up once, infrequently, and then other ones have a sustained moment in the sun where they kind of are revived and are being listened to over a period of time. In the blog, your one on Seamus Heaney in Spain is being consumed against back from the dead, Lazarus-like, and it's been read.
You're dead.
Sorry, the wrong choice of words. And Japan and Argentina are two hotspots for this article for some reason. And if you Google Seamus Heaney in Argentina, then a lot of things come up. So maybe there's some kind of Seamus Heaney festival or something in Buenos Aires at the moment, or before. But yeah, so Job is written by Joseph Roth. He's a fantastic writer. We spoke about him on our previous podcast about him because he wrote about Berlin in the 20s and 30s, talking about refugees, the growing threat of Nazism. He writes about poor people, communists, journalism. You've also read the book recently as well, so it's probably fresh in your mind, his book, Things I Saw, no? I think his name. Yeah, his name.
I saw.
Yeah, and it's a very beautiful cover, has a very similar design as well to the Job book as well. It's put up by the same publisher. You were very impressed as well by a scene in the police office where he sees all these photographs of missing people and unclaimed people. And that will be relevant as well when we talk about the exhibition that we went to on Tuesday, because he is writing about something that seems very cliched if you had to describe it, but then how he addresses it is very sensitive and very creative, and he's talking about these forgotten people and he's giving them life again. You remember that chapter, no?
Yeah, more or less. There was I think there was a big section on social issues.
The whole book, really.
Yes, the whole book, but I mean that some of them are more, just describing or kind of like criticizing about or politics and so on, but there are a lot of chapters that are about the poor and the marginalized. And
exactly, the marginalized.
That's what I was trying to say.
Sorry for finishing your sentence there again. And he takes that kind of social realism into the book Job, which is about a guy called Job. He's a Jewish man, a father of 4 children, and married to a wife as well. And basically, is a tale of woe and functions very much as a parable. There's two parts to the book. The first part is set in Russia, in their village, and then the second part, which is set in New York City. And now a lot of people say, and I would agree with this, that the second part isn't as well written, even though it is still fantastically written, as the first part, because Roth never actually went to America, so he's writing it perhaps appropriately enough based on what he'd heard about it, like the American dream, and that's what shines through in this novel. This kind of luster of the American dream, and because he didn't experience it firsthand, maybe that does the book a good service. But the first book is definitely written so poetically, so beautifully. I think their catalogue of problems start off with their fourth child, their youngest son, who's born, and now he actually ends up playing a crucial part in the book. I won't say any more because that would be to give away the end of the book. But so like he's kind of born with some kind of disability. He can't really speak, can't really move, and the way to describe him, he's some kind of like golem-like creature. He's just kind of, I don't know, almost not human. And they say it's not human because of their prejudice at the time. Obviously, they would treat people like this very poorly and would not really understand them, and would categorize them in very not nice ways, you know. What I like about the book is that it's like Nobody Writes to the Colonel, written by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. It's just a catalogue of poverty and grinding poverty. And I mentioned to you as well, I mean, I read a book, Japanese book, which we'll talk about down the line, where, you know, pretty much within the first few pages, you're starting to form this overall impression of what this book means and maybe what the author is intending. While in this book, it's very difficult to do that until it gets wrapped up at the end, and then you can kind of go, okay, I'm kind of getting this. But also, it's also interesting that you can't do that because it's just about humiliation, the humiliation of poverty, how people patronize you when you're poor. It's about like the familial relations, how like their relationship is broken down as man and wife, and how she really resents him. And he's quite a tragic figure, and you do feel sorry for him. And then you have these things of like they're Jewish and that, you know, they're not treated very well. You know, also this generational thing. He teaches the Torah to children like his father and grandfather did. And, you know, probably for his father and grandfather, this was a noble profession, maybe earn him a bit more money. For him, he's dirt poor because of this. And, you know, in one sense, he's trapped by that because he has to perhaps continue on the family line in that professional sense. But his children are different. I mean, of course they are, because Russia is different. It's on the cusp of the revolution, which is also significant in a sense, even though they don't really go into it. So you have this family kind of dynamics here where the children don't seem very nice people, but in a certain sense you can kind of understand why they're pulling away from their father, and it's this kind of like universal story. So I think in a linguistic sense the first part is glorious because it is written very well. The mother is driven demented from having this sick child. She wants him to be better so much, and you know, the descriptions of her, like, you know, putting her hair to her eyes and just being surrounded by this darkness and these kind of things, or calling upon the forefathers, going to the cemeteries, the rabbis, and calling upon ghosts of antecedents. You know, Roth describes this kind of emotional plea beautifully. But also I think part 2 is quite interesting because he talks about the immigrant experience. He describes how Americans make jokes and how he always dreads them because he never really gets them. He describes America, and the translator really says something interesting as well. I keep saying the word interesting, but the translator has an amazing insight that what Joseph Roth says about America is still relevant. They don't like trade unions. Baseball is important. You have to dress smartly. Money is king, and they venerate. I think it's Thomas Edison or someone who's equivalent, maybe Einstein. I don't know. No, not Einstein. It must be Edison. In the same way that American culture and broader Western culture would venerate someone like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, you know, so there are a lot of parallels there. You have also just this straddling of two worlds where the character Job is kind of in this ghetto with his people, but also he's not in it because he's surrounded by all these new things, and just the language as well is overwhelming, and just Roth is really treating this newness of this new country in a very descriptive way, and it's very universal. I think if you've ever traveled, and even if you haven't, I think you can recognize this sense of being planted in an entirely new environment and then being completely lost in it to a certain extent. So there's more I can say, but I'm sure you want to say something now as well. Or something.
No, I was just wondering how easy it is to read, because mostly it's a theme that is really relevant and interesting, but when you were telling me about the Japanese book, I was getting the impression that the themes behind were interesting and there were a lot of things to get from it, but in reality it was like a tough job to read it, in the sense that the narrative wasn't, didn't flow very much.
No, the narrative flows in the Job book very easily. It flies by. You could read it in 2 sittings even. It's not a big book. I think it's 120 pages, maybe more, but it is very readable. Also, it's based on his life. To a certain extent, his wife was quite sick, and he had her committed to a sanatorium, I believe. And so a lot of the parallels, and he was also like, there's a trope in the book of the wandering Jew. They're always forced to move, and Joseph Watt's life was very much of this character. Like, he moved around a lot, and he felt very guilty about that because he felt he had put maybe a strain on his wife's mental health because of his lifestyle. But so maybe it's because he's such a masterful writer, also because it's informed by a personal experience. I think those 2 factors do contribute to it being a page turner. Yeah.
That was a very complete answer, Mr. Kennelly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Señorita Correas.
Okay, so, is there anything else you want to say about the Japanese book? Because you've told us a little bit about it in comparison, but you didn't expand very much.
No, I haven't said much about the Japanese book. But, I mean, if as an interviewer, maybe you want to, bring out the answers, but okay, I'll tell you some of the story. Well, it's called Dandelion. I don't remember the name of the author because I'm terrible with names, especially if it's very far removed from my normal experience. So it's my first Japanese novel ever. I read it in the original Japanese.
Of course.
As well. I also thought that this book was actually very easy to read. Not as easy to read as the Roth one. So basically the basic story is a woman is also committed to a sanatorium in a place in this Japanese village surrounded by beautiful dandelions, and she's taken there by her lover and her mother, and basically she starts going blind at certain points, and the lover thinks, well, she loves me so much, because sometimes when they're being intimate, and in this book it's funny because they always refer to that euphemistically. It's happened, and she goes blind, and he feels guilty that he's sparked that in her, while because of a tragic accident with the girl's father and the mother's husband, she feels like that incident scarred her and made her go blind, because I think she went blind as well. Yeah, she did go blind when her father was killed, and that's not a spoiler. That's just kind of background information that informs the rest of the book. So they both feel guilty in their separate ways, and the book is also like a short book. It's only 100 and something pages, but unlike the Joseph Roth one, which is like, this thing happened, this terrible thing happened, this terrible thing happened, hey, there's a God. It's kind of like parable progression. This Japanese book is definitely like in sections. There's no chapters. It's just like from page 1 to page finish. It's just one continuous thing, and it all takes place over the course of a night. They drop her at the sanatorium, at the mental institution, where there's a bell and things like that. It's because it's in a former monastery. and then they decide to spend the night in the nearest town in a hotel, more or less, 'cause I think it's set in the 70s, and then they promise to go back the next morning, but of course it like the next morning never happens. I mean, I'm sure it does, but it's not in the story. So the whole focus of the story is just this short afternoon, evening, and eventual nighttime, and then it ends actually going back to like an incident where she's going blind when they're making love, and she can see this kind of thing. And what's interesting about this is because I had very specific ideas about this novel. Like, this is what it means. This is the this is the motif and all that kind of stuff. And then there's translators, no, not translators. It's the author's Nobel Prize winning speech where he talks about Japanese poetry, how it's very simple, but then progresses to become more abstract. And then he talks about Zen, and how Zen is about letting go, and how everything is transitory, and feeling and intuition, how everything that you feel is real. And this is kind of like the central discussion point. And there are many kind of philosophical discussion points in this book, but this is perhaps a central one. I mean, she's going blind, but she's having visions as well. And I think the author is making the argument that that is real and that is valid, but because they don't know what that is, they get freaked out by it. And of course there are things about like mental health stigmatization, because how the mental health people are stigmatized in the book, not directly, but just how the translator, and I presume the writer wrote in the original Japanese about them, is so derogatory. It's supposed to give this kind of message about how they're seen by the society at the time. And also there's like interesting things about subjectivity, sharing stories, and how nobody really truly experiences the same moment in the same way, and that's the subjectivity. So and that how painful that can be as well. And so yeah, I mean, the book is referred to as being transcendent, so it is referring to kind of metaphysical things. Like Job is about God and the potential absence of a God, but I think it's very much rooted in the everyday, while this is kind of more expanded in its treatment of the story, I guess. Also, something you can tell us about, because what's very important here is the writing as well, the calligraphy that they do on the floor and things like that, which the author of the book also practiced, and the sentence he practiced when he was alive is a sentence that a madman practices in the story also. So so you know more about calligraphy as well, don't you? I mean, this is something that you are familiar with.
Yeah, I think we mentioned well, I don't know if we actually mentioned this, or we just had a conversation about it
On WhatsApp, yes.
off air. No. But yeah, it's interesting because calligraphy, I'm more familiar with it like in the Arab world, and it's very different because you're expected to just like enjoy the act of like actually drawing little by little, and like stay focused on the moment. And it's almost like it's not really letters, it's more like art. So even if you're drawing a letter, it's the artistic composition that you use the letters for what really matters, rather than whether the letters are like forming a word or anything like that. So in the end, it's like those symbols that are meant to be meaningful as a society or as a human group, in the end they become meaningful in a different way. Like, they don't have the original function of language, or spoken language, or written language, but they are used as artistic language. And I think I showed you a painting of a ship, and it was all like made out of, I think it was Aleph, so like the letter A just repeated over and over again. And yeah, it had no more meaning than using the shape of the letter to form that kind of object.
Well, it sounds similar to how it's intended in the Zen tradition in China, based on what I can gather from the novel, because you're supposed to focus on your actions, mindfulness, and then the end product can be beautiful, but you're not supposed to be attached to it. It's not the end goal or the overall point of the exercise.
Yeah, I think that's where it differed. I think the idea is the same of like enjoying, well, focusing on the moment and making sure that your full attention is on there, like mindfulness teachings. But then is the idea that what that is expressing is how volatile or how like ephemeral moments like time is. While I think in the art tradition is the opposite. Is like you're kind of like extending time by doing that. So I think that what is the same like idea for the actual activity, but then the concept of like time and what that represents or what that activity tells us about the concept of time is probably almost the opposite.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. I think it's weird because obviously with these kind of cultural traditions you can find ways to plug it into other things, but in a lot of ways the Arabic and Chinese ones are very similar. I'm just trying to think. I mean, there's one thing that stands out from the description in the Nobel Prize speech is about if the sky is white and becomes red, it's not about the white being deleted, it's about the red being alive and then something changes, but also he talks about in other parts of the book you have very common Japanese gardens, and what he seems to be saying is that you don't have, if you want to have a dandelion in there, you don't necessarily put a dandelion in there, you put something that represents that, or you arrange in such a way that it represents something bigger. So it's almost as if you never have the tangible thing or the entire thing. What you have is a suggestion of a thing, which might go back to intuition or feeling, that if you arrange something in a certain way, it suggests a forest. You don't actually have the forest, but that's the point. What you have is that feeling or sensation of the forest, and maybe that's what they're chasing in the book anyway, or what from what I gather from his perspectives on what Zen is. But what do I know? I'm an Irish Catholic. So as far removed from Zen as it possibly could be. But yeah, so I don't know if you have any other things you want to say about the books or things like that.
No, I think, well, no.
Fair enough. Okay, so
I think we can leave it for another day.
No, if you have something to say, just spit it out. I'm not moving on till you spit it out.
No, it just came my mind.
That's a lie. Don't worry. Okay, so if this wasn't the podcast, I would annoy you for longer. But since it is the podcast, we'll go to the photography exhibition, and it's José Antonio Carrera, El Medio del Tiempo, which is the measure of time, and isn't it?
Yeah, more or less. In the middle of it.
Ah.
Yeah. No, but actually, like, it's really relevant for the discussion of the books, because we are talking about the concept of time,
and New York,
yeah.
where Job ends up. So this it's a beautiful building in Miras Rosas in Madrid. I mean, is this a reclaimed building? It seems like a silo or something. Yeah,
it's a water tower.
A water tower, yeah.
It still belongs to the water company, the same as the other one.
Okay, and so you start at the top floor. There's a cinema there showing. For this particular exhibition, they were showing two videos, both about New York, and the second one. In particular, was just like these images that were merge into each other or distort in some way, with some very nice music. And then on the level below that, you had black and white photographs of New York in the 90s, and then other photographs of New York in more recent times, from the 2010s, on the third, second, and ground floor as well. So that's the kind of setup of this, and a lot of talk about flirting glances and ideas and people and things like that. So a lot of exhibitions, the things on the walls explaining them are very strange. But let's focus on the images and the video. So the video left an impression on you. Do you want to start with that, or do you want to talk about the photographs that are black and white of New York in the 90s?
Well, we can start from the top, because normally the videos, they usually have like a slideshow or something like that, or they show you most of the images that you're then going to see. They show you them, and sometimes the author speaks or the photographer speaks. or other people make opinions about them. So in this case in particular, the first video was more or less like a slideshow of the photos that you're gonna see later, the black and white ones about New York, but it had kind of like a reading to it, like there was a woman reading a script. I wasn't too keen on the script, as usually we aren't, but well, I mean, that's just purely random. That's just one example of how people may interpret or string all those photographs together. So you don't need to really agree, or it doesn't even need to be what the author is trying to convey anyway. So it was okay, like just as an idea to get an idea of the photos we were going to see. So that actually sort of makes you excited about going to the next floor down. And then the other video, I found it like quite strange because what it showed, as you said, were portraits of people that were walking, for example, in train stations, and the photographs were treated in a way that meant that the faces were almost deformed. So sometimes they were like cartoon-like, and they had like lines coming out of the people, and they were just blurred and extended in a way that I don't know, sometimes like it made the facial expressions even like a bit grotesque and a bit strange, but it gave you also that feeling of speed and of movement. So I thought it was like quite good, but then those photographs were never there. So like the original photographs were there and were by this author, but then the video had transformed them and turned them into this other thing, which actually I thought was a very good production in itself. It was a shame that in the end those weren't included because they were very good as well. And yes, and the rest of the photos that were in this first set of black and white photos of New York, or these ones that were of like people walking around, were just basically photos of people in the street, and they were just color photos, and well, I suppose we weren't as fussed about those as we were about the black and white photos of New York in the top floor.
Yeah, because you were saying that they were timeless because a lot of people looked as if they could be from the 40s or something like that, and also as well, I think we did see great examples of digital photography on the other floors where there's just great colouring, great light, great sharpness in the image.
That's true.
But I think something about the 90s is just because it's like film, it's like the great directors, they just want to, some of them want to keep filming on film because it has a texture and richness to it that you don't necessarily get when you're filming on digital. So I think these photographs are black and white. They say something interesting because of like angles and things like that the photographer has used, but also just the quality of the film, and just have a thing about them because there are portraits of people, and we saw the Eamon Doyle exhibition back in the summer as well, and some of that was like fine, and it was just pictures of people around Dublin, and some of them were great, others were like, it doesn't do anything for me. But something about this, a similar idea, but in New York in the 90s, there's an imperceptible difference in them, but for some reason they resonate a lot more, and they're truly great photographs. And you mentioned the other ones as well, like the Eamon Doyle exhibition comments on the loneliness of big city living, who are all these people and all these stories and things like that. But speaking of a digital photograph that looked amazing, there was of a woman who was like surrounded by this halo of sharpness while everything else was blurred kind of around her, and you thought that was very poetic as well. So can you add some little thoughts on that?
And you liked her earrings.
She had great earrings, yeah. So
yeah, no, I quite liked it. To be honest, there were two that really struck me of that series. One was of a woman that, she looked really old-fashioned, but very elegant at the same time, kind of like something out of a Hollywood movie, and it was quite I don't know. It was like very very smart but very human as well, and extremely sharp. It was just frightening how sharp it was, if that makes any sense, you know, the portrait or the face of the person in relation to the background. Yeah, there was like so much light. It was almost like the light was like coming out of her, which was quite striking. And then the other one was similar, but then
She wasn't irradiated, was she?
but then the other one was like you were just seeing the back of the neck of the woman, but yeah, it's almost as if you were just right behind her. And I don't know, it just really, I found it like poetic or evocative, because it really made me think of, I don't know, this kind of situation where you sort of feel that you're walking around and there are lots of things happening that you could see in the photograph. They were blurred, like delivery people and other businessmen talking and just things of the city going on. And then it's almost as if everything is a blur, and then you feel completely like separated from that, like you're not really there or nobody notices you. But then the quality of the photo, how sharp the body is almost as if, you know, like that person still matters, like that person still is there and like has entity, and even if she feels like everything else is blurred, it's like the photograph is giving her back her integrity, kind of thing.
Okay, redemptive. Just like something we mentioned in part 1 or 2, Lazarus. I can't remember.
This is part 2.
Oh yeah? I know this is part 2. But we mentioned it either here or in the other parts. I can't remember.
I don't know either.
And yeah, some photographs show there's a problem with wind in New York City. Ties being blown everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Not that kind of
I
wind.
wasn't sure what you were referring to.
Not the human winds. And also there's a picture of an ice rink as well in New York City, which is beautiful. You said it was like a Bruegel painting.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so, and that was a fair enough comment. I agree with that. And also, what else was there in this exhibition? Well, what was cool was like, yes, to go back to Joseph Roth, you know, there's a picture of this kind of Chinese bazaar where you can see, you know, lots of posters and things like that. And then in the corner, this picture of a missing woman, and, you know, I don't know if she was ever found or not, but it kind of reminded me a lot of Roth, and it was kind of, you know, it's a tragic story, but that she's preserved in this kind of form as well has a strange beauty to it, even though, of course, the real life circumstances around whatever happened are not nice. And then what you see as well are just, you know, second rate, I mean, like, you know, this low end shops, hairdressers, suit shops, these kind of things that you always see in kind of poor areas of the city. And they were there, and they had so much character as well. They really told kind of a story of the city. And there's this photograph of a man who has a suit shop, and the mannequins have great suits, but he doesn't, and he has this kind of crazy hair. And there's something about that photograph as well. And then these other social commentary photographs where people are in front of high-end, you know, Victoria's Secret or kind of shops that are famous brands and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much there. But for me, the photographs of the hairdressers kind of resonated more because they were things that you can kind of recognize, as in, like, yes, I recognize this in my city that is financially disadvantaged compared to other parts of the city. So it's kind of more universal, and you can kind of feel like the rhythm of the city in that part of it, you know. And so there's a lot of interesting things there. It's in Canal Isabel II, and you remarked that there's something about New York that just pulls people in, and I think if you go to the exhibition, you will definitely get a sense of that as well. So I think that's everything for part 2, unless you have an interjection.
No.
All right then. Thank you. Welcome back to part 3. Yes, fake news, that book we wrote in Spanish. We're finishing now the English version of the book, so that's very exciting. And more news as it comes about the world of fake news. But also another business sideline that we're we're doing, because you've been designing, kind of like, why am I speaking this intonation?
I don't know, because like your eyebrows are going crazy.
Like the clappers.
Like the clappers, yeah.
New York, I guess, I don't know. But so you had this idea to release or to make designs, kind of pictures around quotes from Irish writers.
Okay, we got it in the end.
And then the first one you've done is Bloomsday from James Joyce, of course. Yes. And we've looked at through some of his quotes, actually, and some of them are very moving. Others very dirty. So we'll be staying away from those ones. But the first one you've done is simply Bloomsday in very nice font, and then these exploding flowers, which add a great effect. You found a video on YouTube of flowers being exploded.
Yeah, being exploded.
Was it like was it Mythbusters or some kind of?
No, I don't know. It's like, it's funny that you Google kind of like petal explosion and you get videos.
Yeah, it's mad. But you've done a super job. You're welcome. And we'll put the link to the website. What is it called? The website?
Tostadora.
Exactly.
The toaster.
The toaster. And
it's also like, I thought of that today because I was thinking, why is it called the toaster? And it's because
you press the t-shirts, right?
Is it called toaster in English too?
No, it's not, but I knew where you were going, so I just cut you off at the pass.
Yeah, that was really annoying. Thank you. No, you knew because I was making like the toasting motion.
That's true. And it's really cool because you made a t-shirt and also this kind of eco bag, which is quite fashionable, and Greta Thunberg would approve if you bought it. So that being said, you can find us on Facebook, our podcast on any podcast platform. Our blog is irishsliceofmadrid.com, and Tostadora for the t-shirts as you just mentioned. And any other place I'm forgetting? Twitter, yes, Elapra1 on Twitter. So thank you very much for joining us for our first podcast of the new year, of the decade or not. And we'll be joining you next time for the next exciting installment of the Elapra Media podcast. Good luck.
Bye.
The Elapra Podcast, the home for cultural chit-chat in and outside Madrid. People will talk.